Thank you, Tim. My name's Nick Rowley. I'm going to be the moderator and chair of each of the Deakin lectures through this week. This is just the beginning, and in working on this, both Tim and I were very keen that we wanted each of the lectures to be regarded very much as a forum, not just hearing wise people on platforms that are then applauded and then we leave and say it was very interesting. To make what is said truly relevant, I think we need to get some really good questions from each of you who come along tonight, and hopefully many of you will be able to come along through the week as well. So we're going to take some questions this evening. We've started a little later. This is going to be 1 hour, this session, from beginning to end. I know the exact moment that Chrissy stood up on the stage, and it will be ending at the exact moment that it ticks over to 60 minutes. I've just taken my watch off, and that is in exactly 19 minutes' time. Now, we've got microphones down here, one here, one here, there's one up there and one up there. So if you do have a question, which needs to be a question, not a speech, not a statement, not an expression of what you think is important and relevant, but a question, and a question to Tim Flannery. And I would like each question, if possible, to be pertinent to what we've just heard. So those are the rules, and I would encourage people to make their way to each of the microphones in order to ask questions. I am going to take the liberty of asking the very first question, and hopefully I stick to the rules that I've just articulated. And I would also encourage people to be provocative. Let's not be safe, and let's not just go through the same old questions about Australia's only small, or etc., etc. Let's try and be provocative. And I suppose I will try my best to be provocative. In my first question to you, Tim, as a friend, as well as a moderator and chair, is that listening to you in this fantastic forum, and listening to the breadth of what you said, and the passion with which you said it, I think you've again revealed yourself to be one of our great public intellectuals. And Glyn Davis has written in the Griffith Review that possibly our first public intellectual was a fellow called Donald Horne, who wrote a book in 1964 famously called The Lucky Country. And in that book, Donald Horne said, most certainly provocatively, Australia is a lucky country, run by second-rate people who share its luck. Tim, my question to you is, was that true in 1964? And do you think it is still true?
I don't think Australia is run by second-rate people, by and large. We have had extraordinarily capable leadership here in various times, and you've just got to think of people like Doc Evatt, who, was the first Secretary-General of the UN, and others, to show the competency of some of our leaders. But our fortune has also been our misfortune, and what Donald Horne was talking about there was really the sort of laziness, in a way, that comes with great good fortune, or that can come with great good fortune. The fact that we make our living from digging things up out of the ground, from exploiting the agricultural frontier we were in the 60s. And some of that's changed and some of it hasn't. Our relationship with the land is certainly changing, and the agricultural sector is reforming. But in terms of the mining sector, and we've seen this come very much to the fore just in the last few weeks, we are still a frontier culture. We still dig up this commonwealth of ours and ship it off overseas. And we allow that to occur in the context of an imperfect democracy, because we still allow, for example, large corporations to fund political campaigns. They can make large donations to people hoping to be elected, which creates an obligation. It's a direct, attack on the rights of the voter. We need, Anna Bligh has said it so well, we need publicly funded elections in this country to start moving away from that model. We also need to hold corporations accountable. They should not be allowed, in my view, to make to indulge in political advertising in an election year without the explicit vote of the shareholder. We need shareholders to own that responsibility. Lobbying groups like the Australian Mining Industries Council and so forth, in my view, have no role in public advertising during that year. And if individuals, CEOs of corporations or other wealthy individuals want to indulge in political advertising, they should be obligated to do it personally, not hide behind someone else, but do it absolutely personally. Rules like that will strengthen our democracy and help us move away from any second-rate notion that we've had of ourselves. And if I could just say more than anything, that plea for people to get involved in a democratic process is absolutely central, because if you leave a vacuum in power, it will be filled instantly. And at this time when we have a weakening authority in government and a change in the way things are done and a weakening sense of the two major parties, people need to get involved again. Whether you agree with me or not, whether you've got a totally different agenda, the issue of getting involved is what's really at stake now for us.
Thank you, Tim. The first question, I'd like to go to the lady with the greying hair, just here. Can you say your name? That would help.
Thank you. It's Jane Morton. I'm from the Climate Emergency Network. We were formed based on information from James Hansen and others to say that we're actually facing a climate emergency, that we're already past the safe point, that really we have to go very fast to get to zero emissions and even beyond. And that politics, as usual, doesn't seem to be heading anything like that direction. I was surprised to hear you saying that courage would be shown by standing up for the CPRS, because it seems like the epitome of the non-emergency measure.
Have you a question?
Question. Okay. So, do you see us? What do you see as a way to? Do you think we need to get to emergency mode, and do you see a way of getting there?
Look, in an ideal world, I would love us to be in emergency mode, because this is a very urgent problem. And what James Hansen and others say is that on the balance of probabilities, we need to address this sooner rather than later, and we'd be very wise to do so. But we have to work with the reality that we have around us. And that question about the CPRS is a classic one, really. And we'll soon know the wisdom of that, because when the CPRS was put up, two Liberals crossed the floor, two rebel Liberals crossed the floor. There was 5 Greens sitting on the crossbenches who could have then voted for the CPRS and made a small but significant gain for us. They decided not to do that, in part because they've believed, and they always have believed, that firmer action is required. And if, after this election, the Greens become a much more powerful force and are able to force through more aggressive action, that view will be justified. But my view of this issue is very much that it's a bit like investing on the stock market. If your companies, a lot of people, I don't do this, but people I know do, they'll buy stocks and the price will go up a few cents and then they'll sell some of them and pocket the gains. It's like pocketing the pennies, and they move forward incrementally that way. And we've got to do something like that with climate change. If we keep on rejecting opportunities to progress, I very much fear we won't get anywhere. So sure, it's not perfect, but it's a beginning. And one of the great things about the CPRS is it would have focused interest in boardrooms around the country on the probability that the price of carbon will rise in future. And the uncertainty around that now is costing us a lot in terms of progress from many of our industries, I'm afraid.
Thanks, Tim. I'm slightly blinded by the lights, but if I could go top right, which is your top left. Is there a question from up there?
Yes. I regard the...
Your name?
Bruce McNeil. I regard the two major issues which Tim referred to in terms of the logging of catchment areas which were previously locked up by the Melbourne Metropolitan Board of Works. They are now long gone, unfortunately, but and there's a major campaign underway by the Wilderness Society.
A question?
The question is,
yep,
in regard to Hazelwood, particularly, I consider that it's possible that it might be able to get a campaign up to phase out the excess lighting in buildings in the Melbourne metropolitan area at least until Hazelwood is closed down. Do you think that there's any chance of that kind of thing? A very practical, straightforward issue.
Thanks, Bruce. Tim?
Look, I think Hazelwood will be shut down when either the owners see that its economic future is not so bright, and that will come about when polluters are forced to pay, or perhaps when opportunities for selling power are diminished, as you say, or when we and our governments decide the time has come to do that. And I'm not enough of an expert in the energy sector to know how we go about doing that. What I do know is that we have to keep on adding pressure to the idea that there is a cost to this, there's a consequence. And ultimately what we need to see is a government here in Victoria that says, by 2030 we're going to be living in a state where there is no conventional burning of coal. That's what is ultimately required.
Man, bottom left, raising hand with sling on his left arm.
Yeah, I go by the name of Ben.
Ben, good.
Do you think it's possible that late capitalist democracies can't deal with this problem? That we'll get to the situation you're talking about in 2030 and nothing will have happened?
It's possible. I think personally it's unlikely. And the reason I say that is when I travel around the world and have a look at what's happening in places like China and Europe, you see this extraordinary revolution going on. And the revolution is going on for a number of reasons, but principal among them is the view that things cannot continue as they are, from a climate perspective, from a general pollution perspective, and so forth. And ultimately, we wooden spooners, Australia, the US and Canada, risk being frozen out of that new world, that revolution that's happening. It's entirely possible that our politics will fail us. But that's in our hands. We're the ones who have to make a decision about that, how we get involved, how we start changing things. Failure is always a possibility, but I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's inevitable.
Ben, that was Tim's answer, but one of our speakers in the week is another Tim Jackson, who is a leading member of the Sustainable Development Commission in the UK and has written, I think, one of the best books on sustainability in the last 10 years or so, called Prosperity Without Growth. And the book, and indeed I'm sure Tim Jackson's presentation, will absolutely get to the core of the question that you've just asked. So I'd encourage you to come along on Wednesday evening down at BMW Edge. Someone has a question, I hope, up, top left, top right.
Peter Cuffey from Nouveau Avant-Garde Rendezvous. Professor, you've certainly outlined the way in which deforestation and concomitant species extinction have now threatened our own very survival as a human species on this continent. In the light of this climate change crisis, do you think that it is incumbent upon our leaders to engage in a paradigm shift where we would actually become a more post-anthropocentric socio-political system utilising tools like ecological econometric modelling in order to completely restructure our socio-economic and political system in an environmentally harmonious manner?
Look, to me, the new politics is really simple. What we need, it's just love each other, love your earth. Simple as that. You get that right, and move forward.
Gentleman in a suit, perhaps we could try short as something to keep in your mind as you ask the question.
Thank you, Professor Flannery. My name's Magnus Mancy. I'm one of the founders of P2P 2020. The proposition's 100% renewable by 2020. Beyond Zero Emissions, a Victorian-based organisation, is about to publish a plan to take Australia to 100% renewable by 2020, detailed, fully costed. My organisation's plan is how we could finance it.
Question?
If we could.
Question?
And the question is, during this week of invitation for open collaboration, we're all in the same boat, is there a plan this week to allow grassroots organisations to present to the assembled masses for very short moments of time a summary of their plan or not?
Look, I would say... Could I just say you've got a unique opportunity this week to engage with leaders in the field. If you want to ask a question that incorporates some of that at some of the forthcoming sessions and ask expert advice on that sort of stuff, I think that would be just fantastic. We haven't been engaged with any particular groups with views beyond that in any formal way, but I do think it's a fantastic opportunity. And we've, the new energy economy would be a great one for you to come along. We've got Grant King, CEO of Origin Energy, very, very interesting company here in Australia. Prasad Menon, CEO of Tata Power from India, also presenting at that. And those sort of people are just extraordinarily valuable to have around when we discuss the practicalities of what you're trying to achieve.
Thanks, Tim. We'll go back left again. And we've got just over 4 minutes, so I think I would just say if we can be short, we might be able to get another 2 questions in.
Tim, Patrick Herbst from Beyond Zero Emissions. You mentioned with the question already the CPRS before that you were quite disappointed in because it would have been at least an incremental step forward. Don't you think that the cancellation of the CPRS is actually an incredible opportunity to move forward a lot faster than would otherwise have happened? I mean, 3 years is a long time. A lot can happen in 3 years. What would you like to see happen in the next 3 years? It will be a much more direct action approach compared to elsewhere. I mean, CPRS clearly would have failed. They've just cancelled coal plants in New South Wales that would have been built under the CPRS. Clearly that shows it was a failed policy.
Well, look, basically what the CPRS was designed to do was to deliver a 5% emission cut in Australia's emissions. And what we're seeing with the latest emissions figures is they continue to rise. So in the absence of a policy, we're just going to see emissions continue to go up and up and up. Now, it'd be lovely to see a better policy put in place, but at the moment we have nothing. We don't have an effective climate policy. And even a policy that's delivering 5% is better than nothing at all. And that's currently the situation we're in. Like you, I hope we'll get a better policy, but there's no guarantee on that unless people get involved and push for it.
It's Sunday evening and I'm not going past 6:45. I'm just repeating myself, I know. Hopefully we'll have time for 2 more questions if we can be concise and they're questions directly to Tim. Gentleman here.
My question is about political action. Would you agree that given that the Labor government is only, the Labor Party is the only one of the 2 major parties that has got any reasonable policy on climate change, do you think that the best action we can do is to allow the press and other people to run down the Labor Party, but to make sure that when we vote we get a Senate that has Greens who have the balance of power and a government that is made up from the one party that does have some ideas about climate change, the Labor Party, rather than the Liberal Party and Tony Abbott, which has no idea?
Well, I've publicly said before that I think the Liberal policy on climate is a joke, and that if they developed a policy of that sort of calibre in the health area or in the economics area, they'd be just laughed out of court. I've said that before. But having said that, what is the Labor Party policy on climate change now? You know, it's nothing for 3 years, and then somehow miraculously we're going to do a catch-up and still deliver by 2020. There's no coherent policy there either. I'm really fundamentally disappointed with both major parties over that.
We have cues by microphones, which means I know that there will be disappointment. But this is the first of a number of events through the week, and I really encourage people to come along. because there will be lectures, there will then be breaks, and then after the breaks there will be forum discussions, so there will be plenty of opportunity for us to engage in questioning. But I will just take one final question from the woman in the brown coat right at the back.
Hi Tim. Hello. My name is Sandra. I work in local government and I've been speaking to people about the Deakins in 2010. One of the things that I found that people were enthusiastic about was hearing an exchange between somebody like yourself who's concerned about climate change and somebody on the sceptical side. Are there any semi-skeptics speaking this week?
No, there's no skeptics speaking this week, and that's my responsibility as curator. I actually wanted to... They get enough airplay, and I actually wanted to focus on solutions, people who've actually done things.
Thank you for that. That's the last question, but these are the first questions of what I hope and know will be many through the week. Just over a month ago, I was lucky enough to be at a lunch at the Wheeler Centre, which was convened by Chrissy and others, and I was lucky enough to meet the granddaughter of Alfred Deakin, who was there, and Roger, her son, as well. And Roger was very kind to give me a bit of background on Alfred Deakin, which I've read diligently. And there was one particular quote that I really want to share with you this evening, which I think has relevance in terms of the way in which we tackle wicked problems and difficult problems that cannot be resolved by media soundbites or indeed by solely focusing on elections. And this was Alfred Deakin at the Adelaide meeting of the Federal Convention, and I think that these words have real resonance for where we are now and for the work that we have to do over the coming week here as part of this lecture series. And Deakin said, "We act for a great constituency, awed as I feel in the presence of those who sent us here. I am more awed by the thought of the constituency which is not visible, but which awaits the results of our labours. We are the trustees for posterity, for the unborn millions, unknown and unnumbered, whose aspirations we may help them to fulfil, and whose destinies we assist them to determine." We all wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Alfred Deakin, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Alfred Deakin lecture series. So with those words, thanks very much, and I look forward to the conversation through the week.